The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Buckingham Palace as Captain James Morrison adjusted his ceremonial uniform. 20 years of loyal service had earned him the position of head of royal security, a role he took with absolute seriousness. His weathered face bore the marks of countless sleepless nights protecting the royal family, and his sharp blue eyes missed nothing that happened within these ancient walls. Morrison had served 3 generations of royals, watching princes grow into kings and witnessing the delicate dance of palace politics. He understood the weight of secrets these walls held, the careful balance between public duty and private desires. Yet nothing in his extensive experience had prepared him for what would unfold on this particular Tuesday morning in late autumn. The palace buzzed with its usual controlled chaos. Servants moved through corridors with practiced silence, their footsteps muffled by centuries-old Persian rugs. The kitchen staff prepared for the day's formal events while gardeners tended to the pristine grounds, visible through towering windows. Everything appeared normal, following the precise schedule that governed royal life down to the minute. Camilla, the queen consort, had been acting differently lately. Morrison's trained eye noticed subtle changes that others might miss. She seemed more secretive about her schedule, often dismissing her usual attendance for private meetings. Her phone calls had become hushed conversations behind closed doors, and she frequently requested changes to her security detail at the last moment. At first, Morrison attributed these behaviors to the stress of royal duties. The transition to her new role had been challenging, with constant public scrutiny and ceremonial obligations. However, as weeks passed, the pattern became more concerning. Security protocols existed for good reasons, and any deviation from established routines raised red flags in his experienced mind. The catalyst came through an encrypted message on Morrison's secure communication device. One of his most trusted operatives, Sarah Chen, had been monitoring unusual activity in the palace's East Wing. Sarah possessed an exceptional talent for observation, having worked undercover operations before joining the Royal Protection Unit. Her reports were always thorough and accurate, which made her current concerns particularly troubling. According to Sarah's surveillance, Camilla had been receiving a mysterious visitor through a rarely used service entrance. This entrance, hidden behind ornate tapestries in a forgotten corridor, had been sealed for decades except for emergency purposes. The fact that someone had not only discovered its existence, but was using it regularly suggested careful planning and inside knowledge of palace security. The visitor always arrived during specific windows when guard rotations created brief gaps in coverage. These timing patterns indicated detailed knowledge of security schedules, information that should have been available only to a select few individuals within the protection unit. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine as he considered the implications of this security breach. Sarah had managed to capture partial images of the mysterious figure, though shadows and careful positioning made identification difficult. The person appeared to be male, well-dressed, and moved with confidence through areas that should have been unfamiliar to outsiders. Most concerning was the duration of these visits, sometimes lasting several hours during periods when Camilla claimed to be resting privately in her chambers. Morrison faced a delicate situation that required careful consideration. His duty was to protect the royal family from all threats, but investigating a member of that family presented unique challenges. The wrong approach could destroy careers, damage reputations, and potentially harm the monarchy itself. Yet ignoring potential security breaches was equally unacceptable. He decided to conduct his own discreet investigation before escalating the matter. Years of experience had taught him the value of gathering concrete evidence before making accusations. Morrison began studying security footage from multiple angles, cross-referencing guard schedules with the timing of unusual activities, and quietly interviewing staff members who might have observed anything suspicious. The evidence slowly painted a picture that made Morrison increasingly uncomfortable. Camilla's behavior patterns aligned perfectly with Sarah's observations about the mysterious visitor. On days when unusual activity was detected, Camilla would dismiss her personal staff early, claiming fatigue or minor illness. She would then remain in her private quarters for extended periods, supposedly alone. Palace records showed that during these times, Camilla's official schedule was always marked as private time with no appointments or obligations. This gave her complete freedom to operate without oversight, a privilege that came with her position but also created opportunities for activities that might compromise security or royal protocol. Morrison's investigation revealed that the service entrance being used had been modified recently. New electronic locks had been installed without going through proper security channels, and the access codes were not part of the main palace security system. This suggested someone with significant authority had authorized these changes while deliberately keeping them secret from the head of security. The modification work had been done by a private contractor, rather than the usual palace maintenance team. When Morrison attempted to contact this contractor, he discovered the company had no official record of the work and claimed no knowledge of any palace contracts. This level of deception indicated sophisticated planning and resources beyond what a casual affair might require. As Morrison pieced together the evidence, he realized he was dealing with something far more complex than a simple romantic indiscretion. The security implications were staggering, and the potential consequences for the monarchy could be devastating if the situation was not handled properly. He knew that his next actions would be crucial not only for his own career, but for the stability of the institution he had sworn to protect. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on Morrison's shoulders as he prepared for what might be the most important decision of his distinguished career. 20 years of loyalty and service had led to this moment, where duty and discretion would collide in ways he had never imagined possible. The morning sun that had seemed so peaceful hours earlier now felt like a spotlight illuminating the dangerous path ahead. Morrison spent the next 3 days conducting careful surveillance while maintaining his normal duties. He positioned himself strategically throughout the palace, observing patterns and gathering additional evidence. His years of military training served him well as he moved through the corridors like a ghost, unnoticed even by his own security team. The breakthrough came on Thursday afternoon when Morrison witnessed something that confirmed his worst fears. From a concealed position in the portrait gallery, he watched Camilla personally disable several security cameras along the route to the East Wing. Her movements were practiced and confident, suggesting this was not the first time she had performed this routine. What disturbed Morrison most was not just the security breach, but the implications of Camilla's technical knowledge. The camera system was sophisticated, requiring specific codes and procedures known only to senior security personnel. Her ability to disable these systems suggested either extensive training or assistance from someone within his own department. After Camilla disappeared into the East Wing, Morrison waited exactly 30 minutes before carefully following her path. He moved silently through the corridors, his heart pounding despite decades of dangerous missions. The betrayal he was uncovering cut deeper than any enemy bullet ever could. The hidden service entrance stood slightly ajar, confirming that someone had indeed entered the palace through this route. Morrison positioned himself where he could observe without being detected, his trained eyes scanning for any movement or sound that might reveal what was happening beyond the doorway. Voices drifted through the partially opened door, too quiet for Morrison to understand specific words, but clear enough to confirm that Camilla was not alone. The tone suggested intimate conversation rather than formal discussion, and the occasional sound of laughter made Morrison's stomach clench with the implications of what he was witnessing. His professional training warred with personal loyalty as he considered his options. Every instinct told him to gather more evidence before taking action, but the security risks were mounting with each passing moment. If foreign agents or hostile individuals had gained access to the royal family through this breach, the consequences could be catastrophic. Morrison decided to position recording equipment near the entrance to capture audio evidence of future meetings. This decision required him to return during the night shift, when fewer personnel were present. He used his master security access to move through the palace after midnight, placing tiny recording devices that would be virtually undetectable to casual observation. The next morning brought disturbing news from Sarah. Her overnight monitoring had detected electronic signals that suggested sophisticated communication equipment was being used in the East Wing. These signals did not match any authorized palace systems and appeared to be encrypted transmissions sent to locations outside the country. The implications hit Morrison like a physical blow. What had initially appeared to be a romantic affair was beginning to look like something far more sinister. The possibility of espionage or foreign Interference in royal affairs raised security concerns that went far beyond palace protocols and touched national security interests. Morrison knew he needed expert assistance to analyze the electronic intelligence Sarah had gathered. He contacted his former colleague, Dr. Michael Torres, who now worked for the government's cybersecurity division. Their friendship dated back to military service, and Morrison trusted Torres with classified information that could not be shared through normal channels. When Torres arrived at the palace under the cover of a routine security system inspection, his analysis of the data confirmed Morrison's worst fears. The electronic signatures indicated professional-grade communication equipment typically used by intelligence services. The encryption patterns matched known foreign operational methods suggesting hostile nation involvement. Torres pulled Morrison aside during his supposed inspection tour and spoke in low, urgent tones. "James, this isn't just palace intrigue we're dealing with. These communication patterns match operations we've been tracking for months. Someone with significant resources and training is using your palace as a base of operations. The revelation that foreign intelligence services might be operating within the palace through Camilla's cooperation sent shockwaves through Morrison's understanding of the situation. Everything he had assumed about romantic indiscretion now took on darker implications of treason and betrayal at the highest levels of the monarchy. Morrison realized he could no longer handle this investigation alone. The scope of potential security breaches required coordination with national security agencies, but approaching these organizations would effectively end his career and potentially destroy Camilla's reputation. Whether the charges proved accurate or not, his decision was complicated by genuine affection for the royal family he had protected for 20 years. Morrison had watched Camilla adapt to royal life, had seen her genuine care for various charitable causes, and had observed her devotion to Charles during difficult times. The possibility that she might be involved in activities harmful to the crown seemed almost impossible to believe. Yet the evidence continued to mount with each passing day. Morrison's recording devices captured fragments of conversation that included references to packages, schedules, and delivery confirmation. While these terms could have innocent explanations, their context within encrypted communications to foreign locations painted a troubling picture. The stress of the investigation began taking its toll on Morrison's health and performance. He found himself unable to sleep, constantly analyzing every detail of the evidence he had gathered. His usually steady hands trembled slightly as he reviewed security reports, and his subordinates began noticing his distraction during routine briefings. Sarah Chen approached Morrison privately with additional concerns about his behavior. As his most trusted operative, she had noticed the changes in his demeanor and suspected he was dealing with something far more serious than routine security matters. Her offer to provide additional support came at exactly the moment Morrison realized he needed help. Morrison made the difficult decision to bring Sarah fully into his investigation. Her skills in surveillance and analysis would be invaluable, and her discretion had been proven through years of sensitive operations. Together, they began planning a more comprehensive investigation that would either clear Camilla of wrongdoing or provide sufficient evidence to justify involving national security agencies. The partnership between Morrison and Sarah marked a turning point in the investigation. With two experienced operatives working together, they could maintain constant surveillance while still performing their normal duties. Morrison felt some relief at no longer carrying the burden alone, but he also knew that involving Sarah increased the stakes for everyone involved. As they prepared for the next phase of their investigation, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they were approaching a point of no return. Once certain actions were taken and certain evidence was gathered, there would be no way to undo the consequences for any of the people involved. The following Monday brought unexpected developments that changed everything Morrison thought he knew about the situation. Sarah's overnight surveillance had captured clear images of the mysterious visitor, and the results were shocking. Instead of a foreign agent or dangerous operative, the photographs revealed someone Morrison recognized immediately from years of palace service. David Heartfelt was a former royal protection officer who had left palace service 5 years earlier under circumstances that Morrison now realized had been deliberately obscured. Heartfelt's departure had been explained as early retirement due to a minor injury. But Morrison's investigation into personnel files revealed inconsistencies in the official record that suggested a more complex story. Hartwell had been one of Morrison's most promising officers, displaying exceptional dedication and skill during his 10 years of service. His sudden departure had seemed out of character at the time, but Morrison had accepted the official explanation without questioning the details. Now, seeing Hartwell's involvement in unauthorized palace access, Morrison began to suspect his former subordinate's departure had been connected to relationships that violated professional boundaries. The revelation that Camilla's mysterious visitor was a former palace employee created new complications for Morrison's investigation. Hartwell possessed detailed knowledge of security systems, guard rotations, and palace layout that would explain how he had been able to avoid detection for so long. His familiarity with procedures also meant he could anticipate and counter most conventional surveillance methods. Morrison decided to research Hartwell's activities since leaving palace service. What he discovered painted a picture of a man struggling with civilian life after years of high-stakes protection work. Hartwell had attempted several business ventures that failed, leaving him with significant financial difficulties. His marriage had ended in an expensive divorce, and he had been forced to sell his home to meet debt obligations. These financial pressures created a concerning context for Hartwell's current activities. Morrison understood how former security personnel could be vulnerable to recruitment by hostile organizations, especially when facing personal financial crises. The combination of inside knowledge and desperate circumstances made Hartwell a potentially valuable asset for foreign intelligence services. Sarah's continued electronic monitoring revealed that the encrypted communications were indeed originating from equipment in Camilla's quarters during Hartwell's visits. The sophistication of these transmissions suggested access to technology far beyond what either Camilla or Hartwell should have been able to acquire independently. This pointed to backing from an organization with substantial resources and technical capabilities. Morrison faced a crucial decision about how to proceed with his investigation. Confronting Hartwell directly might force him to flee before the full extent of the operation could be determined. However, allowing the activities to continue posed unacceptable risks to national security and the safety of the royal family. He decided to implement passive surveillance techniques that would gather additional intelligence without alerting Hartwell to the investigation. Morrison and Sarah established observation posts that covered all possible routes to and from the East Wing, ensuring they could track Hartwell's movements without direct confrontation. The surveillance revealed patterns that suggested Hartwell's visits were coordinated with specific events in the royal calendar. His appearances coincided with times when sensitive information about royal schedules, security arrangements, or official state business would be most valuable to foreign governments. This timing was too precise to be coincidental, and indicated careful planning by sophisticated handlers. Morrison's analysis of palace computer systems revealed another disturbing element of the operation. Someone with administrative access had been copying files related to state visits, diplomatic meetings, and security protocols. The access log showed these activities occurred during late evening hours when most staff were absent, suggesting someone with legitimate credentials was involved in the unauthorized data collection. The realization that the security breach extended beyond Camilla and Hartwell to include additional palace personnel sent Morrison into a state of controlled panic. The scope of the operation was far larger than he had initially suspected, potentially involving multiple individuals with access to classified information about royal activities and national security matters. Sarah's investigation of palace staff revealed several individuals who had exhibited unusual behavior patterns over recent months. 2 administrative assistants had been working unusual hours without proper authorization. A communications technician had requested access to systems outside his normal responsibilities, and a senior secretary had been asking questions about security procedures that exceeded her need to know. Morrison began to understand that he was dealing with a well-organized intelligence operation that had been developing within the palace for an extended period. The careful recruitment of personnel with different types of access suggested professional tradecraft that went far beyond a simple romantic affair or personal relationship. The evidence pointed to a coordinated effort to extract information about royal activities, government communications, and security arrangements. This information would be extremely valuable to foreign governments seeking to understand British diplomatic positions, predict royal movements, or identify vulnerabilities in national security arrangements. Morrison realized he needed to involve counterintelligence authorities, but he also knew that such involvement would trigger investigations that could destroy the careers and reputations of innocent people caught up in the operation. The balance between protecting national security and minimizing collateral damage required careful consideration of timing and approach. His decision was complicated by genuine uncertainty about Camilla's role in the operation. While she was clearly involved with Heartfelt and had facilitated his access to the palace, Morrison could not determine whether she was a willing participant in espionage activities or an unwitting victim being manipulated by someone she trusted. The possibility that Camilla was being blackmailed or coerced added another layer of complexity to the situation. Heartfelt's knowledge of her personal life and royal obligations could provide leverage for forcing cooperation even if she was initially unwilling to participate in activities harmful to national interests. Morrison's investigation had reached a critical point where continued passive observation would not provide the answers needed to determine the full scope of the threat. He needed to take more direct action to uncover the truth, but such action would inevitably alert the suspects and force a confrontation that could have far-reaching consequences for everyone involved. As he prepared for what might be the most important decision of his career, Morrison reflected on the oath he had taken 20 years earlier to protect the royal family and the crown. That oath now required him to act against a member of the family he had sworn to defend, creating a personal and professional crisis that challenged everything he believed about loyalty, duty, and service. Morrison's careful planning culminated in a decision that would change everything. After consulting with Sarah and reviewing all available evidence, he determined that direct intervention was necessary to protect both national security and the royal family from further compromise. The approach required precise timing and careful coordination to minimize risks to all parties involved. The opportunity came on a Wednesday afternoon when palace schedules indicated Heartfelt would be making one of his regular visits. Morrison positioned his team strategically throughout the East Wing, while maintaining the appearance of routine security operations. Sarah coordinated electronic surveillance to ensure all communications would be intercepted and recorded for later analysis. Morrison's plan involved allowing Heartfelt to enter the palace and begin his meeting with Camilla before intervening. This approach would provide definitive evidence of the unauthorized access, while potentially capturing valuable intelligence about the nature of their activities. The risk was that confronting them during an active meeting might result in the destruction of evidence or violent resistance. As afternoon shadows lengthened across the palace grounds, Morrison received confirmation that Heartfelt had been spotted approaching the hidden service entrance. His movements were confident and practiced, suggesting he felt completely secure in his ability to avoid detection. The surveillance team tracked his progress through the corridors toward Camilla's private quarters in the East Wing. Morrison waited exactly 15 minutes after Heartfelt's entry before beginning his approach. This timing was calculated to allow the meeting to begin, while ensuring intervention occurred before any sensitive information could be transmitted to external contacts. His heart pounded with nervous energy as he moved through familiar corridors that suddenly felt foreign and dangerous. Sarah's voice crackled through Morrison's concealed communication device, confirming that electronic transmissions had begun from Camilla's quarters. The encrypted signals matched patterns previously identified as foreign intelligence communications, providing final confirmation that espionage activities were indeed taking place within the palace walls. Morrison approached the door to Camilla's private sitting room with a combination of professional determination and personal anguish. 20 years of loyal service had led to this moment, where he would confront a member of the royal family about activities that threatened the very institution he had dedicated his life to protecting. The door was slightly ajar, allowing Morrison to hear voices from within the room. Camilla's cultured tones mixed with Heartfelt's more common accent in what appeared to be an intense discussion about schedules and timing. The professional nature of their conversation eliminated any remaining doubt about the intelligence operation Morrison had uncovered. Morrison took a deep breath and knocked firmly on the door before entering without waiting for permission. The scene that greeted him confirmed every suspicion his investigation had raised. Camilla sat at an elegant writing desk with official palace documents spread before her, while Heartfelt operated sophisticated recording equipment that was clearly not standard palace technology. Both individuals froze as Morrison entered the room, their faces displaying shock and recognition that their activities had been discovered. Camilla's composed royal demeanor cracked momentarily, revealing fear and uncertainty beneath her normally perfect public facade. Heartfelt's hand moved instinctively toward a briefcase that likely contained additional equipment or documents. "Your Majesty," Morrison said formally, his voice steady despite the emotional turmoil he felt. "I'm afraid I need to speak with both of you about activities that compromise palace security and potentially threaten national interests." Camilla's response surprised Morrison with its dignity and directness. Rather than denying the obvious or attempting to dismiss him, she gestured for him to close the door and join them in the sitting area. Her acceptance of the situation suggested she had been expecting this confrontation and perhaps even welcomed the opportunity to address the complications her activities had created. Heartfelt's reaction was notably different. His body language displayed the alertness of someone prepared for confrontation or flight. Morrison recognized the signs of a trained operative caught in a compromising situation and prepared for various possible responses, including attempts to destroy evidence or escape from the palace. "Captain Morrison," Camilla began with formal politeness that carried undertones of genuine respect. "I suppose you have questions about what you've discovered. I want you to know that everything I've done has been for reasons that I believe serve the greater good, though I understand they may appear otherwise." Morrison remained standing near the door, positioning himself to prevent Heartfelt's potential escape while maintaining a respectful distance from Camilla. His training had prepared him for many situations, but confronting royal family members about potential treason was not covered in any security manual he had ever studied. "Your Majesty, I need to understand the nature of these activities and whether they involve sharing classified information with unauthorized parties," Morrison replied, keeping his tone professional despite the personal pain of the situation. "The evidence suggests coordination with foreign intelligence services, which creates serious national security concerns." Heartfelt spoke for the first time since Morrison's entrance, his voice carrying defensive anger mixed with resignation. "You don't understand the full situation, Captain. There are things happening that go far beyond what you've observed, and sometimes protecting the crown requires actions that appear contradictory to royal protocol." Morrison felt confused by Heartfelt's suggestion that their activities were somehow protective rather than threatening. The evidence of unauthorized communications and document copying seemed clearly harmful to royal and national interests. However, his experience had taught him that complex situations often contained elements that were not immediately apparent to outside observers. Camilla stood and moved to the window overlooking the palace gardens, her silence suggesting internal struggle about how much to reveal. Morrison understood that her next words would determine whether this confrontation resulted in arrests and international scandal, or led to some form of resolution that protected both security interests and royal dignity. "Captain Morrison," Camilla said finally, turning to face him with an expression that combined royal authority with personal vulnerability, "what David and I have been doing is indeed unauthorized and potentially dangerous. However, our activities have been motivated by threats to the royal family that official channels have been unable or unwilling to address adequately." Morrison's mind raced as he tried to process this unexpected explanation. The possibility that Camilla and Heartfelt were conducting some form of protective operation rather than espionage created an entirely different context for everything he had observed. However, the methods they were using remained unauthorized and potentially compromising regardless of their motivations. Sarah's voice in his earpiece reminded Morrison that backup teams were positioned throughout the building and awaiting his signal for further action. The decision about how to proceed would determine not only the immediate outcome of this confrontation but potentially the future of the monarchy itself. Morrison realized he needed to hear the complete explanation before deciding on appropriate action. 20 years of experience had taught him that premature conclusions often led to disastrous consequences, and the stakes in this situation were too high to risk making irreversible mistakes based on incomplete information. Morrison listened with growing amazement as Camilla and Heartwell revealed the true nature of their secret activities. What had appeared to be espionage was actually an elaborate counterintelligence operation designed to protect the royal family from a sophisticated assassination plot that had been developing for months. Their unauthorized communications had been feeding false information to hostile agents while gathering intelligence about threats that official security channels had failed to detect. The revelation began when Camilla explained how she had been contacted 6 months earlier by someone claiming to have information about threats to royal family members. Initially dismissive of what seemed like a crank message, she had shown the communication to Heartwell during a chance encounter at a charity event. His experience in palace security had recognized elements suggesting legitimate intelligence rather than typical threats made by unstable individuals. Heartwell's investigation, conducted through personal contacts in the intelligence community, had revealed disturbing evidence of a well-funded international conspiracy targeting multiple European royal families. The plot involved sophisticated planning that included infiltration of security services, corruption of palace personnel, and coordination between terrorist organizations and hostile nation-states. The official intelligence services were compromised, Heartwell explained to Morrison, his earlier defensiveness replaced by urgent professionalism. We discovered that information about royal security arrangements was being leaked to the conspirators through sources within government agencies. Traditional channels couldn't be trusted because we didn't know how extensive the infiltration had become. Morrison struggled to process this information while maintaining his professional composure. The implications of compromised intelligence services and infiltrated security organizations challenged everything he had assumed about the safety of the royal family. If Heartwell's claims were accurate, the very systems designed to protect the monarchy had become instruments of threat. Camilla's role in the operation had been to act as bait, deliberately appearing vulnerable to recruitment by the hostile agents, while secretly working with Heartwell to identify the full scope of the conspiracy. Her apparent cooperation with unauthorized activities had been carefully designed to gain the trust of enemy operatives while providing opportunities to gather intelligence about their methods and objectives. The documents you've seen me handling, Camilla continued, were carefully prepared false information designed to test the loyalty of various palace personnel and identify potential collaborators. Every piece of so-called classified material was actually part of an elaborate deception operation designed to flush out traitors within our own organization. Morrison realized that his investigation had inadvertently been observing a counterintelligence masterpiece rather than a security breach. Camilla and Heartwell had successfully identified several palace employees who were indeed working for hostile organizations, including 2 of the staff members Morrison's investigation had flagged as suspicious. Heartwell produced a hidden folder containing photographs, communications intercepts, and financial records that documented the conspiracy in shocking detail. The evidence showed that palace infiltration was part of a larger operation targeting government officials, military leaders, and royal families across Europe. The scope of the threat was far greater than anything Morrison had imagined possible. We've been feeding false information to the conspirators for months, Heartwell explained, while documenting their networks and methods. The apparent security breaches you discovered were actually controlled operations designed to make the hostile agents believe they had successfully compromised royal security when they were actually being manipulated. Morrison examined the evidence with the eye of a trained professional, looking for signs of deception or misdirection. However, the documentation appeared authentic and comprehensive, including details that would have been extremely difficult to fabricate. The financial records showed money transfers between known terrorist organizations and several individuals with access to European royal families. The most disturbing element of Heartwell's evidence was proof that the original plot had targeted not just the British royal family but also included plans for simultaneous attacks on royal ceremonies across multiple countries. The coordination required for such an operation suggested state-level sponsorship and resources that posed threats to international stability beyond the immediate targets. Why wasn't I informed about this operation? Morrison asked, his professional pride stinging from the realization that such significant activities had been conducted without his knowledge. As head of royal security, I should have been included in any counterintelligence efforts affecting palace safety. Camilla's expression showed genuine regret as she explained the painful logic behind excluding Morrison from their activities. Intelligence gathered during the early stages of their investigation had suggested that the conspiracy included someone within the senior security staff who was providing detailed information about protective measures and personnel assignments. We couldn't risk involving anyone in the official security structure until we had identified all the compromised individuals, she said softly. Your investigation of our activities was actually a relief because it demonstrated that our deception was working and that you weren't part of the conspiracy against us. Morrison felt a complex mixture of relief, anger, and professional admiration as he processed this explanation. Relief that Camilla was not actually involved in activities harmful to the crown, anger at being excluded from critical security operations, and admiration for the sophisticated counterintelligence work they had accomplished without official support. Sarah's voice in his earpiece reminded Morrison that his backup teams were still positioned throughout the palace awaiting instructions. He needed to make decisions about how to proceed with information that changed everything about the situation he thought he had been investigating. Hartwell's evidence included specific intelligence about an attack planned for the upcoming state dinner with visiting European dignitaries. The conspirators intended to use the formal event, with its concentrated gathering of royal family members and international guests, as an opportunity to execute multiple assassinations that would destabilize governments across the continent. The state dinner is in 6 days, Hartwell said urgently. We've identified the method of attack and several of the individuals involved, but we need official security support to prevent the operation while capturing the conspirators. Our unauthorized activities have gathered the intelligence, but we can't act on it without proper authority. Morrison realized that his confrontation with Camilla and Hartwell had occurred at a critical moment when their counterintelligence operation was transitioning from information gathering to active prevention of a major terrorist attack. The timing meant that decisions made in the next few hours could determine not only the safety of the royal family but potentially the stability of multiple European governments. The weight of responsibility settled on Morrison's shoulders as he considered the implications of everything he had learned. His duty to protect the royal family now extended far beyond palace security to include coordination with international intelligence services and law enforcement agencies in multiple countries. As he looked at Camilla and Hartwell, Morrison understood that his investigation had uncovered something far more significant than unauthorized activities. He had stumbled into the middle of an international conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of democratic government across Europe, and the next few days would determine whether their improvised counterintelligence operation could prevent a catastrophe of unprecedented proportions. Morrison's transition from investigator to coordinator of an international security operation happened with breathtaking speed. Within hours of learning the truth about Camilla and Hartwell's activities, he found himself in emergency meetings with the highest levels of British intelligence services, coordinating response strategies with counterparts across Europe. The secure conference room deep beneath Whitehall buzzed with urgent activity as representatives from MI5, MI6, and European intelligence agencies reviewed the evidence Hartwell had gathered. Morrison watched with professional satisfaction as seasoned intelligence officers expressed amazement at the quality and comprehensiveness of the amateur counterintelligence operation Camilla and Hartwell had conducted. Sir Richard Blackwood, the director of MI5, personally reviewed the financial records and communication intercepts that documented the conspiracy. His expression grew increasingly grave as he realized the scope of the threat and the proximity of the planned attacks. The state dinner, originally conceived as a celebration of European unity, had become the target for an operation designed to destroy that very unity. Captain Morrison, Sir Richard said, his voice carrying the weight of national authority, your investigation has uncovered intelligence that may well save the lives of dozens of world leaders and prevent international catastrophe. The question now is whether we can use this information effectively in the limited time available to us. Morrison felt the surreal nature of his situation as he briefed some of the most powerful intelligence officials in Europe about discoveries made by a queen consort and a former royal protection officer. The unconventional source of the intelligence created both opportunities and complications for developing response strategies. The advantage of Camilla and Hartwell's position was that the conspirators believed their infiltration of royal security had been successful. This false confidence could be exploited to feed additional disinformation while positioning security forces to capture the attack teams. However, any premature action or unusual security measures could alert the conspirators and cause them to advance their timeline or change their methods. Hartwell's detailed knowledge of the conspiracy revealed that the attack plan involved multiple, coordinated elements designed to maximize casualties and political impact. Poisoned wine would be served to specific targets identified by compromised palace staff, while explosive devices concealed in formal gifts would detonate during the ceremonial portions of the dinner. The sophistication of the plan extended beyond the immediate attack to include media manipulation designed to blame the violence on domestic, political opponents of the targeted governments. False evidence had been prepared to suggest that the attacks were carried out by political extremists rather than foreign agents, potentially triggering civil conflicts in multiple countries simultaneously. Morrison coordinated with European security services to verify intelligence about parallel threats in other countries. The investigation revealed that similar operations were planned for royal events in Belgium, Netherlands, and Sweden, all scheduled within days of the British state dinner. The coordination required for such widespread attacks confirmed that the conspiracy was backed by substantial resources and sophisticated planning capabilities. The challenge of protecting the state dinner while maintaining the appearance of normal security became the focus of intensive planning sessions. Too many obvious changes would alert the conspirators, while insufficient preparation could result in successful attacks. Morrison found himself balancing operational security requirements with the diplomatic necessity of proceeding with an event that involved dozens of world leaders. Camilla's continued role in the deception operation required her to maintain contact with the conspirators while secretly coordinating with legitimate security forces. Morrison watched with admiration as she demonstrated remarkable composure under pressure, conducting conversations with hostile agents while providing real-time intelligence to security coordinators. The identification of compromised palace personnel created additional complications for security planning. 2 kitchen staff members, a communications technician, and a protocol officer had been confirmed as active participants in the conspiracy. These individuals needed to be monitored without alerting them to the discovery of their activities, requiring careful coordination between legitimate security personnel and intelligence operatives. Morrison developed a complex plan that involved replacing key compromised personnel with intelligence, officers trained to maintain their roles, while feeding false information back to the conspiracy coordinators. The kitchen staff members would be told the wrong timing for food service, while the communications technician would unknowingly transmit false security protocols to external contacts. Sarah Chen proved invaluable in coordinating the technical aspects of the deception operation. Her expertise in electronic surveillance allowed the security team to monitor all communications between palace personnel and external conspirators, while ensuring that false information was transmitted convincingly. The electronic deception required precise timing to maintain credibility while providing tactical advantages. The pressure of coordinating international security responses while maintaining normal palace operations began taking its toll on everyone involved. Morrison found himself working 18-hour days, coordinating with time zones across Europe while ensuring that routine security measures continued without alerting suspicious personnel to the heightened state of alert. Camilla's performance under pressure exceeded all expectations from intelligence professionals who had initially been skeptical about involving a member of the royal family in active counterintelligence operations. Her ability to maintain composure during conversations with hostile agents while providing accurate intelligence to security coordinators demonstrated remarkable courage and skill. The breakthrough in identifying the conspiracy's leadership came when Hartwell's continued surveillance revealed a meeting between the compromised protocol officer and a man identified as Colonel Viktor Petrov, a former Russian intelligence operative known to be involved in destabilization operations across Europe. This identification provided the missing link that connected the palace infiltration to broader international threats. Petrov's involvement confirmed that the conspiracy was indeed state-sponsored rather than the work of independent terrorist organizations. The implications for international relations were staggering, as successful attacks on European royal families during a unity celebration would have provided justification for aggressive responses that could have led to broader conflicts. Intelligence, gathered through continued surveillance of Petrov, revealed that backup plans existed for alternative attack methods if the primary operation was discovered. These backup plans included attempts to assassinate individual royal family members during their routine activities, ensuring that the conspiracy's objectives could still be achieved even if the state dinner attack was prevented. Morrison realized that success in preventing the immediate attack would not eliminate the ongoing threat to royal family members. The conspiracy's resources and determination suggested that multiple additional attempts would be made until either the operation succeeded or the entire network was eliminated through coordinated international law enforcement action. The decision to proceed with the state dinner despite the known threats reflected careful analysis of strategic considerations that extended far beyond immediate security concerns. Canceling the event would signal successful intimidation by hostile forces, while potentially alerting the conspirators to the discovery of their plans, allowing them to escape and plan future attacks. Morrison's coordination with international security services resulted in the deployment of unprecedented protective measures disguised as routine diplomatic security. Teams of specially trained agents posed as palace staff, while advanced detection equipment was integrated into the formal dining arrangements to identify any attempted use of weapons or explosive devices. The final preparation phase involved detailed rehearsals of response procedures for various attack scenarios. Every member of the security team, from Morrison down to junior officers, practiced specific roles in countering different types of threats, while maintaining the formal atmosphere required for diplomatic events. As the day of the state dinner approached, Morrison felt the weight of responsibility for protecting not only the royal family, but also dozens of world leaders whose safety depended on the success of their improvised counterintelligence operation. The coordination between amateur investigators and professional intelligence services had created an unprecedented opportunity to prevent international catastrophe. Camilla's final briefing sessions with Heartfelt and Morrison revealed additional intelligence about the conspiracy's connections to other destabilization efforts across Europe and beyond. The state dinner attack was apparently part of a broader campaign designed to weaken democratic institutions and create opportunities for authoritarian expansion. Morrison understood that the next 24 hours would determine whether months of careful investigation and planning would result in the protection of democratic leadership across Europe, or whether the conspiracy would succeed in creating chaos that could reshape the international political landscape for decades to come. The evening of the state dinner arrived with deceptive calm as guests began arriving at Buckingham Palace for what appeared to be a routine diplomatic celebration. Morrison positioned himself in the security command center, watching dozens of monitors that displayed every angle of the palace while coordinating with teams stationed throughout the building and grounds. The first phase of the conspiracy unfolded exactly as Heartfelt's intelligence had predicted. The compromised kitchen staff attempted to introduce poisoned wine during the pre-dinner reception, unaware that security teams had replaced all beverages with carefully tested alternatives. Morrison watched with grim satisfaction as the conspirators' first attempt was neutralized without their knowledge. Colonel Petrov arrived as an accredited member of a diplomatic delegation, his false credentials having passed routine screening procedures that had not been alerted to his true identity. Morrison's teams tracked his movements through the palace while maintaining the appearance of normal security protocols, waiting for him to make contact with internal collaborators before taking action. The ballroom filled with dignitaries from across Europe, including prime ministers, presidents, and royal family members, whose safety represented the primary objective of months of careful planning. Morrison felt the weight of protecting dozens of world leaders while simultaneously conducting a complex counterintelligence operation designed to capture an entire conspiracy. Networked to Camilla's performance throughout the evening demonstrated remarkable courage as she continued her role in the deception operation, while hosting one of the most important diplomatic events of the year. Her conversations with suspected conspirators were monitored in real time, providing final confirmation of attack timing and methods while maintaining the appearance of normal social interaction. The critical moment arrived during the formal dinner service when the compromised protocol officer attempted to position explosive devices, disguised as ceremonial gifts near the head table where senior royals and visiting heads of state were seated. Morrison's teams had anticipated this action and were ready to intervene the moment the devices were revealed. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through Morrison's earpiece with urgent updates about electronic signals indicating that the explosive devices had been activated remotely. The sophistication of the attack plan included fail-safe mechanisms designed to ensure detonation, even if individual conspirators were captured or failed to complete their assigned tasks. Morrison made the crucial decision to initiate arrests simultaneously across the palace, abandoning stealth in favor of immediate action. To prevent the explosive devices from detonating, security teams moved with precision through the ballroom and service areas, apprehending conspirators while specialized bomb disposal experts located and disabled the hidden explosives. The arrest of Colonel Petrov occurred in full view of diplomatic guests, creating a moment of dramatic tension as the reality of the threat became apparent to world leaders who had been unknowingly targeted for assassination. Morrison coordinated the explanation of events while ensuring that security operations continued to protect against potential backup attack methods. Simultaneous arrests in other European countries successfully disrupted parallel operations that had been planned for royal events in Belgium, Netherlands, and Sweden. The coordinated international response made possible by intelligence gathered through Camilla and Hartwell's unauthorized investigation prevented what could have been the largest terrorist attack in European history. The aftermath of the successful security operation revealed the full scope of the conspiracy that had been operating within European royal households and government institutions. Financial records seized during the arrests documented a network of corruption and infiltration that extended far beyond what even experienced intelligence professionals had suspected possible. Morrison's investigation, which had begun with concerns about unauthorized palace access, had ultimately uncovered and helped prevent an international catastrophe that could have destabilized democratic governments across Europe. The unconventional methods used by Camilla and Hartwell had proven more effective than traditional intelligence approaches in penetrating the conspiracy's security measures. The recognition of Morrison's role in coordinating the successful counterintelligence operation came from the highest levels of government and international security organizations. However, the personal satisfaction he felt came from fulfilling his oath to protect the royal family and the democratic institutions they represented from threats he could never have imagined. When he first took that oath 20 years earlier, Camilla's courage in participating in the dangerous deception operation earned widespread respect from intelligence professionals who had initially questioned the involvement of royal family members in active security operations. Her willingness to risk personal safety to protect others demonstrated leadership that extended far beyond ceremonial royal duties. Hartwell's expertise and dedication proved that effective counterintelligence work could be conducted outside traditional organizational structures when motivated by genuine commitment to protecting democratic institutions. His transition from royal protection officer to international security coordinator illustrated the value of experience and dedication in addressing evolving threats. The conspiracy's defeat required continued vigilance as investigations revealed connections to additional networks operating in other regions around the world. Morrison's expanded role in international security coordination reflected recognition that modern threats to democratic institutions required unprecedented cooperation between traditional rivals and unconventional allies. Sarah Chen's technical expertise proved invaluable in analyzing the communications and financial networks that had supported the conspiracy, leading to additional arrests and the prevention of follow-up attacks that had been planned as contingencies for the failure of the primary operation. The state dinner concluded with a toast to international cooperation and democratic resilience, though most guests remained unaware of how close they had come to becoming victims of an attack designed to destroy the very unity they were celebrating. The successful protection of democratic leadership demonstrated that dedication and courage could overcome even the most sophisticated threats. Morrison's 20 years of royal protection service had culminated in a mission that extended far beyond palace security to include the defense of democratic institutions across Europe. The investigation that began with suspicious behavior in palace corridors had evolved into a testament to the power of vigilance, courage, and international cooperation in protecting the values that democratic societies hold most dear. The lasting impact of the operation would be measured not only in lives saved and attacks prevented, but also in the strengthened relationships between intelligence services and the improved security protocols developed to address the evolving nature of international threats to democratic leadership and institutions worldwide.